What is on your mind that you would like to start today's programming off with?
Well, what I want to do and what I don't want to do is do this program today. I was thinking about that. That's what's on my mind. And I was thinking, well, why is it that I don't want to do the program today? And it's because I keep doing the program. And why do I want to do the program in the first place? And what am I talking about? And what else would I be doing if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now? And I don't get answers that satisfy me. Nothing that I'm doing right now satisfies me. And anything else that I'm thinking about doing, or even the things that I haven't thought about doing, because I was thinking about, well, I'm going to say this on the podcast today, that would I prefer to be driving a truck in New Mexico right this minute, on my way to Texas, long haul? The answer is no. Well, would I prefer to be going on a cruise to the South Pacific and looking forward to eating some island food? And the answer is no. And would I prefer to be on ProduceJustice.com? And the answer is no. Well, Neely Fuller, what do you prefer to do? If you had your druthers and you could be anywhere in the world doing whatever it is you wanted to do. And my answer is, I don't know. And I'm telling the truth. Then it comes down to another question. What should I be doing? Because that's the first question I asked. And I should be solving the race problem if I go by logic. Of everything that I could be doing anywhere at any time, had my druthers, would it be solving the race problem? And the answer is no. And then I started thinking about a 2-hour program I was looking at last night on television. And it was about stopping crime, the crime wave, carjackings, murders, murder rate going through the roof in every city, even though it said it's down from last year. What does all that mean? That's in the northwestern hemisphere they were talking about. But then there's a murder rate going on all over the world. So when I think about murder rate, that's what I think about. Every murder that's happening somewhere on the planet. And particularly where it affects people of color, black people specifically. The murder rate in Baltimore, in Washington, D.C., in Niger, in South Sudan, in Brazil. What's the murder rate? And I say these are the problems that should be solved by me. Fuller, what have you done to solve the murder rate? This one thing among black people. What are you doing now? What are you going to do? What are you going to do today to solve it, actually solve it? Not just stand around asking other questions, people about it, and they're asking you, and everybody's giving their opinion. What about actually solving it? Because in that 2-hour program that I came away with last night, I was thinking about, I've heard programs like that, and looked at them on television going back to the 1950s and 60s. They could be duplicated almost word for word that everybody said if you just run reruns of old grainy black and white, no color television for a long time back in the 1950s in the average house. And they were saying the same thing. Exactly. And into the 60s, for sure. These are the things that are on my mind. So here I am again this morning talking about what? Basically a race problem. Because you're talking about crime. People, after I listening to the bottom line last night, I'm saying I want somebody to come up with the bottom line now so I can learn what should be done. And it's the same thing. Somebody ought to do something. People got to get together. We got to have more cohesion in the community. People got to learn to love one another and respect one another. And we have to teach that at an early age. How many times do you hear that? So what's the solution? They say, well, we just have to figure out a way. I mean, we got to find our way out of this. Everybody wringing their hands. Millions of cities. Well, we're working on it. Solving the problem. And then when the racial element comes up, then it really gets messy. And they kind of trail off. And I say, well, what do you actually do when you turn the television off as an individual person? Because it always comes down to individual people. You, Neely, as an individual, you listen to a 2-hour program about crime. Now, after you turn off the television, what are you going to do? That's going to put a stop to it. Stop the killing. You're going to stop all the killing going on in Haiti right now. What I saw another program saying the murder rate in Haiti is going through the roof. So what are you, Neely Fuller, what are you going to do about it? Straighten out that situation in Haiti right now, right this minute. Get off the phone and go to Haiti and wave your hand and everything falls in place, including all the cleanup from the storms they've had. Why don't you do that, Fuller? You're doing all this talking. So that's what's on my mind this morning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's on your mind this morning. Again, solving the race problem, and you don't know what you want to do. Okay, let's do this. Let's go right to the phone lines, and we will start off with Darnell in New York. Darnell, let me see if I can clue you in or get you in here. Let me see. Okay, Darnell, you're on. Cut your radio down in the back or whatever that is, and you're on.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Can you hear me clear?
There's a background noise in it that makes it hard on Mr. Fuller and myself.
1 second.
That's better,
yes. Is it better now?
Okay. Yeah, that's better.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Fuller, my question for you today is, according to the code, can the victims of the system of white supremacy consider themselves adults if the white folks that are white supremacists supply everything for their livelihood and their sustenance?
The question is, can the white people do what?
No, the question is, can the victims consider themselves adults when the white folks provide everything.
Yeah, well, wait a minute. Okay, let's slow down. Can the victims of white supremacy do what?
Consider themselves adults.
Consider themselves
adults.
A joke?
Adults. Adults.
Yeah, adults, Mr. Fuller.
Adult. A-D-U-L-T.
Yeah,
yes.
Adults.
Well, it depends on what you call, what definition you want to use. Because throughout the world, you got different people of different ages, and you have different standards for what's considered to be what you say is adults, meaning grown up. You're grown. Well, everybody should be still growing, because what do you mean by growth? And it comes down to that word. What is an adult? Well, a person who is fully developed, some people say. Well, when is a person fully developed? Well, different people got different standards that you can fit into society, they call it loosely, whatever that means, where you know enough to be able to function to a certain degree where you don't have to depend on someone else. Well, when is that? So it goes on. So in answer to that question, when should a victim of racism consider him or herself an adult by the compensatory standards? The answer is when you know everything that you need to know to solve every problem that you have or someone else has that you think should be solved. And when is that? Now, I'm talking about according to compensatory logic.
Yes, sir.
Which is the standard that I use. When you can do it. Like I'm talking about solving a race problem right now. I haven't done it, so I'm not an adult. I'm not grown. I'm growing, hopefully. I haven't stopped growing because I'm still trying, or think that I'm trying, or trying to fool myself into thinking that I'm trying, or something.
Still learning, huh?
But I'm still learning. I say that every time I come on this program. Because as long as you're trying to still learn, it means you're not grown.
Okay.
That is my opinion based on logic.
Okay. Alrighty. All right, Darnell, is that it for you? Okay. All right, Darnell. Thank you for your call. Let's continue in the NYC, and we're going to go to the top where we won't stop. That means you, Black Top. Get ready. Okay, Black Top, you are in. There you go.
How you doing today, Mr. Fuller?
I'm still learning.
So I have a question for you. Do you think we can consider the compensatory code? Do you think we can consider that a religion into itself?
Yes. What is a religion? A religion, according to logic and evidence, is a strong belief backed up by action. So if you believe that the race problem should be solved and that you've come up with an idea that may help to solve it, and you really believe in that idea like I do, a codified approach, united independent, meaning the individual, each individual should be working to solve it without trying to look over somebody else's shoulder all the time. Look through yourself and say, I should be solving the race problem. And if you really believe that, and you're really talking about it or trying to fool yourself into thinking that that's what you should be doing, or you're really sincere about doing it, then you think that you're sincere about doing it, then that's your religion. Why? Because that's your focus. Now, if you have another religion, or it might be several religions that you have or claim parts of, then you have what the codified view is, eclectic pluralism. That's a term that I made up. They would say, what does that mean? Choosing from many.
Mm-hmm.
So you choose many different ideas that you pick up a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and try to come up with something that will do what? Solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
Because religions are supposed to be about solving problems. Last I heard from most people who say they have religions.
Okay. All righty. All right, the top, Black Top, thank you, in the NYC. Thank you very much. Mr. Fuller, you started off basically today's program. I interpreted it as you didn't know. You didn't know whether you wanted to do this program or you didn't want to do this program. I think you mentioned about being a truck driver in New Mexico or someplace where you didn't know, solving the race problem. But don't you think that since nothing is always except the Creator, don't you think that is generally part of life? Some days you feel like doing something, and some days you don't.
Sure. And so if that's what's on your mind, and I was asked that question, the compensatory way is to answer the question. What I'm really thinking about at that moment. And that's what I did. Well, I think that's what I thought I did.
I mean,
the mind kind of bounces all over the place from one minute to another.
It does.
And my mind is no exception to that.
I guess what I'm getting at is it's not a penalty to say or feel that sometimes you don't know or you don't feel like doing something, maybe something that you should do or maybe something that you shouldn't do. That's just maybe I'm wrong or maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, but it seems like that is part of the growth process in the still learning category.
Oh, sure, because, see, the codified approach is you just try to find the truth, whatever that is. And even if you're talking like something doesn't make sense at all, well, you're finding that out. Because you can't... Codified logic means you, first of all, try to find the truth and present it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tricky process, or it can be. Or it can be just easy, which I find it easy. When I'm asked a question, I just say, now, what's the truthful answer to that question? That's why I fumble on every program trying to get to the essence of what I'm being asked. But I want that clear. Because otherwise I'll get that one thing that the mind really is not wired to stand, and that's confusion. And my mind is no exception. And I get confused very easily.
Okay.
Some people, it's very, very difficult to confuse them. I have heard so many different views on so many different things over so many long periods of time that I'm very easily confused.
Yes, sir.
So I have to get people's words straight.
Yes, sir.
And I have to take things very slowly because my mind works very slowly over a period of time.
Mm-hmm. No, that's okay. All right, let's see here. Let's give to all the people in the chat room, Be Good One, Black to Death, B. Sam's 21, the brother in England, J.J. Killer, Emery Lubamba, J2K2, Justice Warrior, Falani, if I pronounce it right, and 888 Rita, and that other name that I cannot pronounce. but you know who you are. I mess it up. Text Green 777. Hey, we appreciate you all for being in the chat room, for being part of the program. 516-453-9921 is the number to get in contact with the show. And you know what? I'm going to break it a little early so we can kind of go straight through. So you are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, to get in contact with the show, you know the numbers, but if you don't, here they are. 516-453-9921. When you get in that number, make sure that you give the call screen of your name. And if you have something to say, make sure that you push the number 1 button and be brief so that we can get it in and Mr. Fuller can interpret what you're saying. And if you can, please, ma'am, please, sir, pronounce it slowly so that we all can hear. And if you have any background noise, put that to a C, okay? You can join the chat room also by going to blogtalkradio.com. Then you want to click on where it says programs. You get the program menu, and then you want shows. And the show that you want staring right in front of you is the Produced Justice show. You put that in, and the chat room is available. You can get into that. Okay. And lastly for that, you can do this. You can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com. And once you do that, it will not necessarily be read on today's program, but I have it in file, and when it comes up, time permitting, according to the call volume, then your Gmail will be read, and I will give you that information. All the books are in, so make sure if you don't have a book or you want to get somebody a book, if you want to give it as a gift, you can do that at ProduceJustice.com. Mr. Fuller's interview on the Carl Nelson Show is now up on the at ProduceJustice.com, as I was told. We were told this morning, and I believe that is all the house cleaning that I have to do at this particular point. So let's go back in. All righty. Let me do this, Mr. Fuller. A lot of people ask you about the book all of the time that you can get by going to ProduceJustice.com. Briefly, just speak about your book for those who are new to the program, wondering, what is this book? What's going on? Why are these people talking about the book? So, Mr. Fuller, for a few moments, could you talk about your book and how you can get this book?
Well, you can get the book by going to ProduceJustice.com, and it's addressed to the individual person, particularly the victims of the system of white supremacy, which in the book itself, it says that's the biggest problem on the planet among the people of the planet. The biggest problem in economics, the use of time and energy, which is what basic economics is. The biggest problem in education, entertainment, labor, the different types of labor, et cetera, law, all about law, crimes, murders. The biggest problem is the race problem called the system of white supremacy in law, in politics, meaning how people interact with each other each and every minute of each and every day, all over the world, the planet Earth. The race problem dominates the political sphere, directly or indirectly. In politics, which is called people relations, and then in the area of religion, same thing. Dr. Martin Luther King said people can't even, who have the same religion, they'll say that they're, for example, they're Christian. But when it comes to the black and white, they can't even go to the same church and prefer not to. for whatever reasons they give, if they're going to tell the truth. Why is it? A lot of it might be because of style, but it has to do with the color of the skin. People will say that they have the same God, the same religion, the same religious leaders, the same beliefs, yet they can't sit next to each other on what they call the holy day of a week. And Dr. Martin Luther King noticed that years ago and commented on it. And people know it and try to pretend that they don't know it. And they don't ask themselves questions about why is it that 11 o'clock on Sunday morning that black and white is not together in a church, yet they claim to have the same beliefs. And the same God, etc., etc. And then when it comes to sex, the race issue immediately comes to the fore. Who you going to marry? What color is that person going to be? If it's a so-called royal family, wait a minute, you're fixing to get into the baby thing. Well, we're not talking about that. We're just talking about royalty and all that. Wait, you're talking about color. What color is that baby going to be in the royal family? You better figure out how that's, have some doctor, kind of predict what that baby is going to look like. Or it's going to be a problem in this kingdom. That's in sex. War, same thing. Who are we going to give guns to? You don't want everybody to have the same kind of gun or the same type of bomb. Suppose you have a hydrogen bomb and you have some black people who are in charge of it. You better look into that. Get a hold of that real quick. You know, those people don't know what to do with anything. You want to let some of them put their finger on the nuclear trigger? Nuclear trigger don't go with a you know what. So this is what the book is about.
Yes, sir.
Getting rid of the system of white supremacy, which is the only form of racism that really exists, and replace it with what? Replace it with justice. You wouldn't get rid of racism just to be getting rid of racism and don't even know what it is. Mm-hmm. Racism is the most damaging form of non-justice, imbalance between people in the known universe, because it's an evil based on people mistreating people based on color. And it's the most powerful form of mistreatment. So you get rid of that before you even consider getting rid of non-justice on planet Earth. You're not going to straighten out anything dealing with non-justice, mistreatment of people, without racism being the first order of business, because that's the most damaging form of mistreatment of people on planet Earth in 2023.
And the book
you'll get instructions about how to do what, as a victim of it, the system of racism, of what to do and what not to do.
Okay.
And instructions about what to say and what not to say by going to producejustice.com.
All righty. Thank you for that book. Let's see. I forgot to mention William Harris 6, Rita 888, and Seshat Task Felt 7. I forgot to mention that. These are people from the chat who are there, but something came up in the chat that I'm going to read, Mr. Fuller. It says that this comes from Seshat Task Felt 7. It says that Dr. Francis Cress Welsing coined the term ISIS papers, and now that terroristic group ISIS dominates the headlines instead of the ISIS papers. If the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept become global, then it will be deemed, quote, terroristic to the global system of white supremacy racism. That is a very interesting thought, and it could be true. I don't know. What do you think, Mr. Fuller? Could it be? Could they do that?
Well, people can say anything, but then I say that, well, for what I have written, because I've never really read the ISIS papers, so I can't comment on that. I've listened to a lot of speeches, and I read Dr. Welson's pamphlet, Color Confrontation, many years ago, the Crest Theory. But in the textbook for victims of white supremacy, I stand by whatever I've written on the subject of racism, period. Yeah. And people ask me questions, and that, and the truth comes out if you ask enough questions and enough answers.
Yes,
so
sir.
I'm saying, if a person wants to say that my book, and I'm quite sure some people have said that, that it instigates terrorism or something, because I've heard that people have said it, I say step forward and make your case.
Okay.
And I'll answer any questions that anybody has to ask, because it's counter-terrorism. See, I do want to make the racist afraid of practicing racism and have a greater regard for the creator of peace or the theory of peace. And that's what my aim is. Because we already have enough terrorism. I'm not trying to spread terrorism. I'm trying to counter the terrorism. But you have to make people afraid of it or find it distasteful or whatever in order to say that racism is terroristic, which is what I say is the greatest form of terror. So if someone says, well, you're going to make the terrorists afraid of practicing terrorism, yes, if you can, make it distasteful for them, or just change their minds, which would be better. Just say, hey, I'm tired of being a terrorist. I'm tired of making people fearful. That's no longer any fun to me. So that's the easy way of doing it, and I like to see the white supremacists, who are the people who are, just get tired of the idea. That would be a nice way. Just
sure
say,
would.
well, let's try something else. Let's have peace for a while.
Okay. Well, anyway, I thought that was an interesting thing that was in the chat room. I thought I would bring it up. Let's go to Milwaukee, and we have Corey. Corey, get ready. Make sure everything's turned down. Here we go. Corey, you are now in. Go ahead, sir.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, I was recently having a discussion with a white person, and we're speaking about justice, and this white individual's response to the killings and the unjust killings that keep happening on the planet is more killing. His response was that these people who make an unjust killing should be killed. I mentioned the compensatory code response of what should happen and what the punishment should be for someone who commits an unjust killing. So my question, Mr. Fuller, is can you please explain how it is not logical to respond to murder with more killing? Thanks.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fuller?
Well, according to the code, first of all, a person that commits murder, killing another person unjustly. First of all, according to the code, everybody should know who did it. I mean, the minute that it happens, everybody on the planet, any person that murders another person, kills another person unjustly, willfully and deliberately. That's what murder is. Everybody should know two things: who did it and why. That's before you get into any other details. Who did it and why. So all this stuff about snitching and all like that, that goes out the window. Everybody should know who did it. Somebody out here murdering somebody right this minute. Everybody should know who did it and why. And then go from there. And if they find out that the person is doing this, or persons, whomever they are, according to what's in the code, if I'm answering the question that's being asked, what the code says should be done with that person. If that person should be confined in what is called maximum emergency compensatory confinement. That's 4 words. Maximum emergency compensatory confinement. And what that means is the person should be put into as isolated a cell as you can put them in, with nothing in there with them as a companion around the clock, but the instrument, particularly in this modern day, the firearm, or a duplicate of the firearm. You can't find the actual firearm that was used. Be put in that cell with the person that committed the murder. That's the only thing in there, not a book, not a TV, not nothing. That's the companion of the person who committed the murder. That's your friend. You use it as your good buddy in doing what you did to another person, which is to kill that other person. So the logic of justice is that you be put in confinement with your excellent partner in having done what you did. That's the closest buddy you got, and that's the closest buddy that you deserve. And in that gun, there should be 1 bullet. And when you decide you don't want to sit in there with your buddy no more, because that's the last person you're ever going to talk to, you're going to be put in that confinement. That's what is recommended in the code book. Maximum emergency compensatory confinement. That person should be put in a place that is completely silent, and just a light, a small light, shining on that buddy of yours, if you're the person who's in there. That's your good buddy. That's your partner. That's something that you worship. That's your Bible. So you and your Bible are getting along just fine. Because that was your partner in murdering whomever you murdered. And that's the only thing that you should talk to from now on. And if it can talk back, it'll talk back with the sound of you putting that gun to your own head. That really makes you close with your good buddy in crime. See, now this should be worldwide. That when you commit murder, this is what's going to happen to you. After they go through all the details and have the retrial and all that, and you finally wind up because they proved that you did it, wasn't no mistake, and that the circumstances show that you did it deliberately and et cetera and unjustly, because that's what murder is, you should be put there. Neely Fuller should be put there. I'm advocating this as the codified recommendation. It's in the textbook in detail. You be put there. Fed one excellent meal per day through a trap door. But you don't have a conversation with nobody. Why? Because the person that you killed doesn't have a conversation with anybody. So you deserve what they got. You saw to it that this person was not going to have a conversation with anybody. That's why you murdered the person.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're going to murder yourself.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Fuller. What you just said, now, the three people allegedly killed and mutilated Emmett Till, and then they allegedly admitted that they did that. But a jury of their peers, I understand it was 12 white people or white men, I don't know, set them free in this court of law. Should they be or should have been put in emergency efforts to off them since they admitted that they did that?
Absolutely. See, this should be a worldwide law. You just take this for granted. People talking about stopping these murders and whatnot. No. If you're going to do it according to the code, that's what I have recommended in the textbook itself, and it goes. I mean, some situations are very primitive and all like that, but you come as close as you possibly can to that type of situation where you don't hear the sound of a train. Why? Because the person that you murdered does not hear a sound of anything. When you're dead, you don't hear anything. You don't see anything. You don't talk to anybody, but you are able to see. So you're given that little break so you can see that weapon that you use and use that bullet whenever you decide you want to go, because you decided when that other person went. You made that decision. So if you lynched Emmett Till and beat him to death or whatever, well, it's kind of difficult to beat yourself to death. But I understand they shot him too. So
yeah.
That's the fastest way to go. See, that's the humane element under what they call the Constitution in the Northwestern Hemisphere. When people say, well, that's cruel and unusual punishment under the Constitution. No, it isn't, because you make it uniform. Everybody, this is what happens when you murder somebody. You make up your mind that you're going to make somebody leave this earth. Then you make up your mind that you're going to it sometime if they catch you. And you're going at the time that you choose. You'll be fed one excellent meal per day because you're not using a lot of time and energy. You're not doing push-ups or anything. You got tired of doing that in the half dark. You're not talking to a guard, so you don't get a chance to cuss nobody out.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, that is the environment.
Okay.
The person that you kill doesn't hear anything, doesn't talk to anybody. You cut them off from all of that. So you think you're supposed to still be here, walking around, breathing?
A jury of their peers.
When you took the breath from someone else?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
A jury of their peers, even though the three allegedly admitted that they did that they killed him, they said that they let him go. I guess justice was served. I don't know. Anyway, I just thought I would throw that out there. Thank you, Corey from Milwaukee. Thank you very much. Let's go to Illinois. Justin, get ready. Let me move this over there. Okay, there we go. Justin, you are on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning. Go ahead, please. Justin, Illinois, come on, you're on. Okay. Last time, Justin, you there? Okay. All right, you're not there, so if you come back, come back in and give the call screen of your name. Okay, we're going to get some holler. You know what that means? We're going to the NYC, and that would be the dollar bill. Hey, you are on. Go ahead, sir. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Mr. Fuller, I wonder, my question is, I have a lot of questions, but the thing I would say, I'm not confused with it, but if you could do it all again, go back in time with the knowledge that you have now, what would you have done differently to eliminate the system of racism, white supremacy?
Going back in time, what have I done? Have done differently?
Well,
I would be doing what I'm doing now. I'm trying to get rid of the system of white supremacy, because white supremacy was well established before I was born. So once I became aware of the system and how it worked, then I would have immediately gotten on it earlier than when I did, which I was almost 30 years old when I started writing the textbook for victims of white supremacy. And that's the only thing I would have done. I wasted a lot of time and wasted a lot of time even after I became aware, because I was learning. And it's taken me all this time just to figure out what I was supposed to be doing when I was born, because nobody was telling me. I was getting all kind of signals from everybody. I mean, you should go here and go there, and I should have been fighting white supremacy. Why? Because that's the biggest evil on the planet. And I was right in the middle of it. And the evil was pointed against me. So that's a no-brainer. You get rid of the thing that you're assigned to get rid of. That was my assignment. But nobody was telling me this. They were just saying, that's something that kind of gets in the way. They didn't tell me that's the whole show. And I was right in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. And that my assignment was trying to get rid of it. I kept getting signals that was my assignment, but it wasn't clear. So I'm trying to give everybody else, as best I can, in my own feeble mind, a leg up on what, if you're black and you're on the planet now, what your priorities should be.
Yes, sir.
And that is replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice by whatever ideas you can come up with and codify it and then do it. And I'm saying black people are way away from what I consider, based on what I've gained, as the logical purpose for them breathing, every black person on this planet, right this minute. trying to replace the system of racism with the system of justice. I'm saying logic tells me that is a black person's assignment. And the further you try to get away from that assignment, the more problems you're going to have in everything else you set out to do. Because I see black people doing this and doing that, and I'm right in the middle of it, doing this and doing that. But nothing is going to make sense in the system of white supremacy. And that's why black people, in my opinion, include myself, are just as crazy as we can be.
Okay.
Because nothing is supposed to make sense in a system of racism.
And that's on purpose. Okay. All righty. Dollar Bill, thank you. Thank you very much for your call there. New caller alert. Let me see here. New caller alert. Let me see here. From L.A. Wow, up early in the morning. Okay, get ready. I think it's Gillis. Okay, Gillis, you are on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning. 7 a.m. out there, just about? Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Gillis. You're on with Mr. Fuller.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I have two questions. And should I ask the first one and then the second one?
Yes, the rule is you ask the first one, then give Mr. Fuller a chance to answer it, and then you ask the second one. And I can tell you right now, hey, why don't you hang on, Gillis, because we're getting ready to go into a break. So just hang on right there, and let's take this break right here. Okay, hang on, I'll get you right back in. Okay. All righty, we have basically concluded the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller. If you missed any of that, you can certainly go back and get it. Don't forget that the interview that Mr. Fuller had on the Carl Nelson Show is now up on our web site at producejustice.com. You can get that. All the books are in, and we thank you for listening. Forgive us for the mistakes forgive me for the mistakes I've made, because I have made many mistakes. Okay, now we're getting ready to go into the second hour, so I'm going to give Mr. Fuller the last word before we commence on the second hour. Mr. Fuller, the last word to close out the first hour.
ProduceJustice.com, and for those who have the book, just look at the back cover, or go to the website, ProduceJustice.com, and the back cover of the book should be there, and it's about the author. But it's about what the author has written. I didn't write anything about myself and where I was born and all that. I just gave my name as the author of the book. But then I have a list of things about what this book is about. And if you get lost, you can always go to the back of the book, the back cover of the book, and it has a list of things about what this book is about and about what black people are supposed to be doing, broadly speaking. And then inside the book goes into the details.
Let's resume the calls, and we're going to go back to Gillis in Los Angeles. He has two questions. All righty. Gillis, we got you back in. Thank you for holding, and go ahead, please.
All right, yes, thank you for having me. Yeah, so first of all, I would like to premise that I've confessed that I haven't purchased the book yet, but I will purchase it in the very, very near future. But thanks to your website, I was able to listen to many, many, many of your previous shows, right? So I think I'm a little bit acquainted with Mr. Fuller's ideas and thoughts. So, okay, so the first question is, I'm interested in Mr. Fuller's universal man and woman concept, and I wanted to know, Mr. Fuller, can you explain a little bit, can you explain a little bit the definition of a universal man or woman, please? Thank you.
Okay, that's first question. Mr. Fuller?
Well, there are people, a universal man and a universal woman, ideally, would be, and following the logic, people who, in every area of activity, always did things, said things, and did things that produce a constructive result in every area of activity. the ideal man and the ideal woman would be people who are always constructive, never non-constructive. That's the key. In every area of activity, 24/7, each and every day. Never anything that's non-constructive. They don't have an ideal man, ideal woman, universal man, universal woman. When they said something, it always had a constructive result. They didn't waste words. Just say things just to be saying it, or saying things that are non-constructive, directly or indirectly. Every time they opened their mouths, they said something was going to have a constructive effect, or they're not going to say it. That's the ideal. And everybody should be trying to acquire that ideal, regardless of whom they are, white, non-white, male, female, young, old, etc., etc. Everybody on the planet should be striving to be the universal man or universal woman, meaning anywhere they go or whatever they did in the universe, from the minute they show up to the minute they leave, everything about them is constructive. Never, not one thing, non-constructive, not one conversation. They don't make idle talk. Every word that they say is going to have a constructive effect on what they're doing and what everybody else is doing. I mean, when they come around, things that are constructive just automatically start happening if they're involved in it. Because they're not involved in anything that's non-constructive. Not at all. And everybody should be trying to achieve that in him or herself, so that the universe itself will be the type of universe that it ought to be. Never anything out of place. And they say, well, you're talking about a perfect society, Fuller. You better believe that's what I'm talking about. Why not? They say, well, that's not possible to achieve. Who said that? Who said that? And where did they get their credentials for saying that? We don't know. They say, well, people have tried it. I mean, talking about utopia and all like that. Yeah, people talk about it. They've been talking about it. Oh, yeah, everybody who has a religion talks about that. We're talking about it and doing it. How many people actually practice their religion to the hilt? They even fight about their own religions. So that hasn't worked. That's not constructive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have religious wars, so-called. But that's just more non-constructive activity. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have a label for it. It's non-constructive. If it's destructive and it doesn't build people up, it's tearing them down. So that's not the way a universal man and a universal woman should be described.
Yes, sir.
So that's the aim for it.
Mm-hmm.
Not just getting rid of racism and greed, but make every move that you make something well thought out, so that you come up with the most constructive result that can possibly be made in anything that you say or do.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I hope that answers that question.
Okay, now let's go.
Some of it is described in the textbook.
Yes. Okay, quickly, Gillis, number 2, your second question, please, sir.
Yes, thank you. The second question is a little bit long-winded, so I hope you can bear with me. It's not too long. So it's that,
please, yeah, because
so
we're short on time, please.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, I think you mentioned in the previous interview, if someone say they are part of a race, then that entails that a person believes in practicing racism, which means favoring your race over others in certain areas of activity. So I wanted to know your thoughts on, do do you think the same reasoning can be applied to the idea of being part of a tribe, which seems to me can only lead to tribalism, and even deeper than that, being part of a family, which seems to me to lead to quote-unquote, it's in quote because the word maybe I made up, familism, whereby you favor your family over others. So should a universal man or woman aspire to be a member of the constructive human group, which would then lead to constructive humanism, which in my opinion is a positive thing, so therefore that will be a constructive result. So I want to know if I can get your thought on that, Mr. Fuller, and thank you very much for taking the time today.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Fuller, as much as you can decipher from that.
As much as I can decipher from it is that we have different words that really mean the same thing. And that's why I say that if everybody just thinks in terms, starting right this minute, it's not a long, drawn-out process, of everything that I do and say to any other person or that involves any other person, creature, or thing, is going to have a constructive result or a non-constructive result. So you just choose to do the most constructive thing. It requires quite a bit of thinking in every circumstance. What's the most constructive thing that I can do and say?
Mm-hmm.
That's involved in anything. That's the codified way of looking at it.
Okay.
You can call it by whatever names you want to, but the bottom line is it going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect?
That's the bottom line. Okay.
Yes. I mean, whomever it involves. You can call it family, tribe, whatever, or just nameless. But you say, now, is there a problem here that has to be solved? How do you solve it in such a way? Because you're really not solving it if it's not having a constructive effect.
Exactly.
How do you solve it in such a way that it has a constructive effect? The most constructive effect. What is said and what is done.
Yes, sir.
And if you and when everybody is focusing on practicing just that itself, theoretically, logically speaking, everything like it's mathematical just falls in place.
Falls in place, yes, sir.
Regardless of what kind of label you put on it. It's either constructive or non-constructive.
Yes, sir. Okay. All right, Gillis, thank you from Los Angeles, up early in the morning. As I always say when we have a new caller, don't be a stranger. Thank you for your call. Remember the last hour, Mr. Fuller was talking about murder. Well, Jacoby 2Kane2 or J2K2 says this. For more information, and he brought this up, and it's very good, I think, information. In the original version, I believe it's the 1980. Is that the 1984 book, Mr. Fuller?
That's the original.
Okay, yeah. Well, he says that in on pages 205 to 234 in the original version, speaks about murder. It's long. He says a lot to digest there in the ninth area. But for those who had questions about that, get that. And if you don't have the book, get the book. Order the book from ProduceJustice.com. I'm not trying to plug it that way, but if you don't have the original version, it's in there, and he recommended that. So that's on pages 205 to 234 in the original version. That's the 1984 edition. Okay, now this one here, William Harris 6 said this, Mr. Fuller. He said, I just heard the Dollar's question about what Mr. Fuller would do different if he could do it again. He said in summation, nothing would be done differently. even though he admits, he being Mr. Fuller, admits that he has done nothing and failed his task in eliminating racism. So how could he state that he wouldn't do anything different if he could do it again? Mr. Fuller?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I said that or it was interpreted that way.
Okay.
Sometimes I don't express myself, and apparently I don't, in the correct way. That's why I kind of refer to the book mostly, even though the writing is not very clear either in some ways. It's a very poorly written book, but it's the best that I can do.
Okay.
But that's why I have this program, the podcast, to try to clear up some things.
Yes, sir.
That may be misunderstood.
Okay.
But I'm saying, if it doesn't work, if you try it and it doesn't work, that means something different should be tried. It's got to be modified in some way. As what I have written hasn't been followed in the way that it was intended to, or I wrote it incorrectly. I don't think I did, but the book itself expresses that it's all about trial and error. Since no one has solved the race problem. So everything that I'm writing is just an attempt to replace the system of racism with the system of justice.
Okay.
Which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help gets the most constructive help at all times without fail.
At all times. Okay.
Yes.
Seshat Tas Effect 7 said this in support of you. He said this to William Harris 6. He said, Mr. Fuller always says that he could be incorrect, but until most non-white people on this planet has access to the code book, we will not know. He also admits that once the white supremacists see that he is receiving too much attention, then that's when they will determine what to do about his threat. So there you go. Maybe that's in support of what you had said. Anyway, we move on. Back to the phone lines. By the way, 516-453-9921. If you are just tuned into the program and want to get in on the discussion, we'd love to have you in here. We're going to go to Connecticut. Get ready, Brian. We coming. Here we go. Connecticut, you are on, Brian. Good morning, and what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Good morning. Mr. Fuller, you have shared in previous shows about your military service. Parts of military training revolve around discipline, the ability to receive and carry out orders. The mental condition of many black people shows a lack of discipline. My question is in two parts. Part one, how is discipline developed according to the code?
By believing in what you're doing and wanting to do it. You have to want to do it in order to have what you call real discipline. Real discipline, functional, is self-discipline. So how do you get it? In answer to your question, you get it by wanting to do whatever it is that you are going to do or whatever you think ought to be done. You want to do it. You got to have that want.
Mm-hmm.
That four-letter word, W-A-N-T, in page 171, 172 of the 2016 edition of the textbook.
Yes, sir.
Has that. First person you ask about want is yourself. What do I want to do? 4 questions. They'll always lead where they should lead. 4 questions. What do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? That's the second question. How do I plan to do it? So if you want to do something and you know why you want to do it, next thing, it's got to be a plan. You got to have a plan to do. Walk across the street or whatever. What's my plan? How do I plan to do it? Mm-hmm. And then what I call the real bottom line, really concentrated question is, what do I expect the constructive result to be?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Of me doing what I want done. And everyone should ask that question all day, every day, and particularly taking in consideration, intense consideration, that 4th question. What do I expect the constructive result to be of me doing what I want to do? Now, you got that gun in your belt. Now, what do you want to do with it? Why do you want to do it? What's your plan for doing it involving that gun that you're carrying? And the clincher question, what do you expect the constructive result to be of you using that gun sometimes today? All of the people within the sound of my voice who are carrying a gun in their belt, whether it's a law enforcement officer or whether it's a drug dealer or whether it's whomever you happen to be. You got a gun.
Yeah, kids nowadays.
Yes, but you got a gun. So now, what do you want to do with that gun today? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? And you can ask yourself that every day that you're carrying it.
Every day.
So sooner or later, you're carrying a gun. You just might use it. So you better have a plan. How all this is going to work out after the gun smoke is long gone.
Okay. All right, Brian in Connecticut, thank you for your call. Well, you don't have to be a stranger. You know what's up on that deal there. Mr. Fuller, there's been a lot of traffic about the 1984 book. I've even had some references saying biblically that it's like the Old Testament, 1984, and the New Testament, 2016. I understand that there are people that request the 1984 edition even over the 2016. Why did you write the 2016 32 years later? Did you feel that there was a need for an upgrade or clarity or what?
I thought so.
Okay.
Yes. I wanted to say the same basic thing, but I wanted to say more. I wanted to give more details. Like in the area of sex, I didn't give as many details as I wanted to, because that's always a big one.
But both
the
are
area
good,
of
though.
sex when it comes. But there's thousands of other things that I could say a whole lot better. In fact, I could rewrite the entire 2016 edition and the 1984 edition. I have seen where both of those books could have been written a whole lot much better, but this is in hindsight. I look at the book sometimes and I just shake my head. I said, this is too convoluted. I could have made this much simpler.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know how. See, I'm not really what most people would call nowhere near being the type of writer that I ought to be.
Okay.
I'm a very poor writer.
Well, before we go to...
By my own standards. Now, some people say, well, it's good enough. Well, but it's not good enough for me.
Okay. Before
by
we go
my own standards.
To Anthony in Nashville, in your opinion now, both books, the 1984 and the 2016 edition, which you can get at ProduceJustice.com, both books are still relevant, aren't they?
Oh, all the books are, because
good.
For one thing, I was looking for something like the book that I have written at the time that I wrote them. I said, we got all these writers out here. They're not telling us what to do. They're giving us all this. And I appreciate it. I appreciate all the books that I've read by Richard Wright, and including the novels. Fiction writing. A lot of it written by white authors and whatnot. But I'm saying they are not. Where are the books that tell me what to do today if I got a problem?
Okay.
And how to solve that problem today in the next 15 minutes. I got to have this. I got to have a book like that right now. And so I said, well, I'm gonna try to write one.
And you did.
And so the rest, as you might say, is history. I'm here on the air talking about the same thing, talking about the same book.
Yes.
And all these decades. Because the problem hasn't been solved. But there's a way to talk about solving the problem that addresses the problem that the individual has right that minute.
Okay.
And I couldn't find books that would tell me, hey, I got a problem right this minute. Can anybody hand me a book that will tell me exactly what to do and what not to do right this minute as a black person in this situation on this job that I'm on? I got to have instructions about what to do and what not to do right this minute.
Yes, sir. Okay.
And that's what made me write the book that I have written. But in retrospect, I say the book is very poorly written because I just could have done better.
Okay.
And here on the air, I say, well, hey, I'm nowhere near where I ought to be. As long as I've been doing this podcast, just as long as I've been doing that, I'm not coming up with enough answers that are put out here in a simplistic manner. Simplicity, more direct.
Yes, sir.
I mean, do's and don'ts.
Do's and don'ts. Okay.
Well, you're failing. You keep trying, but trying ain't good enough.
I found this interesting. Let's see. Such Hat Pass Felt 7 mentioned this. Says, George Orwell's 1984. Coincidence? Anyway, Justice Warrior says this to you, Mr. Fuller. He said, Mr. Fuller, please stop. Stop beating up on yourself. You did that damn work, and we all can understand it. And you did it without any editor or major assistance the way most authors have at their disposal. People don't like you to beat up on yourself, Mr. Fuller. They don't like it. All right, Anthony, Nashville. Get ready, man. Get ready. You are on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. I have a VGQ, and I have a question. And you can take me off the air, Mr. Bobby, after I get
I'm sorry?
done. So I said you can take me off the air after I get done.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So my VGQ is I most honestly believe the creator created us different for a reason. And every organism, from a cat to a human, all have natural logic and any other emotion. I don't necessarily believe that we all have the same mindset as far as the viewpoint of the world and what we do. Mm-hmm. So, and my question is, I noticed in every fairy tale or every Disney movie I've watched as a child, I noticed that there was always a good guy and a bad guy dynamic. And pretty much I noticed that the good guy was always someone white and the bad guy was always something dark in appearance. So, Mr. Fuller, as a child growing up, did you realize the racism in the fairy tales you watched in the theaters?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I saw racism in everything. Because why? It was there. and I still see it. In everything. You name it. Hey, this is all about racism. All of it. Regardless of what it is. And that's why I say it's got to get rid of racism or you're not going to solve any other problem, period. In any area of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, or war. It's all about what color somebody is, directly or indirectly. It may not jump out at you, or even when it does and you don't recognize it. But it's there. Everything is dominated by the system of white supremacy. That's how you say it. The system of white supremacy dominates the thinking of all of the people on planet Earth, directly or indirectly, even when they have never even heard the term white supremacy or racism. It dominates the behavior. It's the most powerful political and religious force ever invented in the minds of people on the planet in the year 2023. Now, that statement is either true or false. Everybody is affected by it, including all of the millions of people, billions of people, some might say, who never even heard the term racism, maybe. Or, what are you talking about? They would say. At least thousands of people would say that. What is he talking about? Racism? You know, what's that? But it dominates all the moves that they make. It's the most powerful political and religious force ever in recorded history. In recorded history, to appear among the people of what they call planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
According to the evidence and according to the logic. Okay. Nothing is more powerful. And everybody is influenced by it. Even the millions of people who wouldn't have any idea what you're talking about if you mentioned it.
Mm-hmm. All righty, we've got to break it here. You are listening, and thank you, Anthony from Nashville. You're listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and we thank you for listening. We've got about a half an hour of showtime left, give or take a few moments. But if you would like to join in on the conversation, do this. 516-453-9921. Get up in here. Give the call screen to your name in the remaining moments that we have, and we will make every effort to get you on. If you can't do it that way, oh, by the way, if you're a first-time caller, you get special treatment. Tell the call screener that, and you'll get you get that dish. How about that? Yeah, okay. So do that. Again, get a call screen of your name so that I could properly give you an introduction. If you don't want to do that, you can Gmail me. Now, chances are, those there, I have plenty of them. I don't think I'm going to get a chance to get to any today, but if you decide to do that, here's the address. The numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. You do that, I will give you a symbol that I have it, and when we have time in the show, depending upon the call volume, then we will get to your Gmail. So it will not, capital N-O-T, it will not be ignored, okay? And lastly, you could join the conversation in the chat room, and as you can see today, I have taken some chats off of there and read them for conversation. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com, and then when you do that, you want to go to the programs menu, get programs, and then after programs, select the Produce Justice shows, because it comes under shows. Get that, and then the chat room is available for you to do that. Now, don't forget, you can get all the books, and we've been really heavy on the books today. People have been asking about that and quoting from some of the books, including the Word Guide and that 1984 edition. You can get all of them by going to producejustice.com. That is producejustice.com. Get them. Get them. Ooh, man, get them. Yeah, they're there. Okay, and this here, if you missed it, Mr. Fuller, we have it on our website, producejustice.com. His interview on the Carl Nelson Show is up. And a caller called in from California and mentioned that he went back and picked up other interviews. So if you missed anything, it's all on producejustice.com. It's happening right there. So that's all that, I think that's all that you need, producejustice.com. Okay. All righty, let me see. Okay, Brother Muko is in there. Okay. Let's go to Georgia. Okay, Emery, let's see if I can get this thing over here. Wait a minute. Okay, Emery, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. I just wanted to do a little small VGQ and then ask a question. This is one of the most deadliest summers for the victims of white supremacy here in the Northwestern Hemisphere, primarily those of us classified as black people. We've had a lot of murders and killings. People are walking around with guns, just shooting at random. Any dispute ends in shooting or murder. I just want to just ask Mr. Fuller, what does he mean when he says no contact, no conflict, and why does he say it?
Okay, good question. Mr. Fuller?
Because it works. You can't have conflict with somebody you're not in contact with. So the code says specifically, minimize all unnecessary contact with anybody. And that is by, everybody's walking around with a cell phone trying to make contact with somebody. And most of it you hear from black people just walk down the street. And you'll hear black people sometimes shouting and cursing. Many times. They're making contact with somebody, and it's not working out, the conversation. So suppose they couldn't make contact. Well, one thing you wouldn't hear is the shouting and the cursing from the back of the bus or wherever. You hear a whole conversation going on a bus sometimes, or a subway car, or just walking down the street passing somebody. Well, look, I told so-and-so and so, and another thing, I'm on my way over there. So I'm going to straighten this mess out. And I know so-and-so better not be there when I get there. I ain't going to say what I'm going to do, but he better not be there when I get there. Now, that's making contact. See, and whatever it is, it sounds like it's going to be something not going to work out in a constructive manner for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But this is black people all over the northwestern hemisphere for sure. Every day, all day. Hostility of every type that you can name. If you want to put a label on it. Something hostile. Something hostile. Never nothing pleasant. Always hostile. Hostility and anxiety. All uptight. Angry. See, but you put distance in answer to the question. And distance can mean no contact, no conflict, by word or deed. You're not nowhere where you can touch the person. Or, even better still, you can't even talk to the person or even about the person. Because you haven't even seen or heard anything about the person in 5 years, maybe. And the person you haven't seen or talked about or anything, and anybody heard from them, anything like that, in the last 10 years, say, since you left high school. Nobody's seen them, nobody's talked to them. Are you having conflict with that person? Most likely not. Why? Because you haven't had any contact with them. It's just that simple. So you minimize contact, one black person to another. If they're half a block away, and that's about as close as you get to the average black person. About as close as you can get. Well, you can't even say good morning or good evening or cuss them out. You're not in contact with them. You get along with them fine. Why? You ain't no contact. No, it's a no-brainer. Or a person asks you about somebody and say, oh, I don't know him. I don't know her. Oh, when? If you did, man, I'm telling you, you're going to get your gun in the next 5 minutes. I'm telling you, that's what, that Helen is her name, and I'm telling you, you ever meet up with her, so. Okay, you say, yeah, but I know you said we live in the same town, whatnot, but I don't know Helen. In fact, I don't know no Helens at all. You know, I ain't even met nobody named Helen. As I think about it, you know, and so they say, oh well, if you knew, Helen Jones, the one that I know, man, because I'm over at her house right now. And, man, I got something for her. Because, I'm going to straighten this mess out. I ran into her last year. There was a lot of mess then. Now she's back in town. And some mess has started already. And I'm on my way over there. Now you're fixing to make contact. All right? Now you're already talking about it's going to be messy. And so chances are, that's where the gunfire is and all that.
Yes, sir.
It comes from contact. So the code book says, when it comes to black people, minimize contact by minimize conflict by minimizing contact.
Mm-hmm.
And you have contact with people, but make sure in advance that it's going to have a constructive result. That contact that you have, it's going to wind up, when you say, okay, I'll see you, goodbye, that whole conversation and the whole point, the whole 2 hours you spent together, it produced constructive results. Everything that was said was constructive. You walk away from every conversation that you have with every person, and you walk away walking on a cloud. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay.
Because you produced a constructive result. Otherwise, if you sense there's going to be a non-constructive result, don't make contact. Period.
Yes, sir. I heard you say that on the Carl Nelson show about constructive result. The last interview you had with them Thursday, constructive result. All right, thank you, Emery, for your call. Let's go to Detroit. Not Nathan Detroit either. Detroit, where Deontay, get ready. Let me see here, Deontay. There we go. Okay, Deontay, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question? Okay, Deontay.
I'll mute my phone. Good morning.
Yeah, there you go. All righty. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good morning. Sorry, my phone was muted.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
First off, I wanted to say that I'm always so privileged to talk to y'all, especially Mr. Fuller. Such a big inspiration for all of us. So just thanks again a million times. 2 quick questions. The first question is, Mr. Fuller, how can black people possibly overcome the self-hatred that some of us deal with?
Self-hatred? Okay, Mr. Fuller.
How can black people what?
Overcome our self-hatred of ourselves.
By setting goals that are constructive. Just change your mind about one thing, joining in on what is popular black culture, which is just as shabby as it can be. Culture is what? Whatever you're doing. And what you're doing is either constructive or not.
Mm-hmm.
Constructive, non-constructive. There's no such thing as in between.
Mm-hmm.
Black culture has been tragic. I called it, the textbook called it tragic arrangement.
Tragic arrangement. Tacky,
yes, sir. It's trashy, it's terroristic. That's
yes,
what
sir.
describes what you call black culture in 2023. Tacky. And if you try to improve on tackiness, I call it the 3 T's, it's in the textbook. If you try to improve on the tackiness, meaning just sloppily put together, the way we talk to each other, just sloppy, tacky. I mean, just saying anything rather than something precision that's going to have a constructive effect. Our conversations are tacky. Whether we're talking to white people or black people, we're just tacky. You try to improve on the tackiness, then it gets trashy. It goes from tacky to trashy. It'll do it almost every time. Because it doesn't get no better than tacky. And you try to improve on it, then it gets to be trashy. We even say, we're talking trash, man, but we enjoy it. It's a part of what we call our black culture. Trash talk. And if you try to improve on the trashiness, then it gets terroristic. Somebody becomes fearful. Somebody's in danger.
Yes.
It's going to be gunfire.
Yeah. I've heard that before.
That's the pattern. I mean, and we brag about it being black culture. Tacky, trashy, terroristic.
Mm-hmm. So much so.
Very seldom anything that's halfway constructive. Can't have a constructive conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be trashy. Have a whole lot of vulgarities in it. I mean, we brag about it. We've been doing it so long, we think that this is about as good as it gets.
Yes, sir.
Try to spread it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The funny thing about that's not funny is that some people will name their children trashy, tacky, and terroristic. That's crazy. Dante, what is your second question?
On average, a person is supposed to have 2 parents and 4 grandparents, 2 parents on each side, but in a lot of our cases, it's usually just 1 parent. So, Mr. Fuller, listening to you, I think you became sort of like a grandfather, if we're young enough, type of figure for us. And I can't thank you enough. My second question is about Maya Angelou, because she became like that from a woman's perspective, reading all of the work that she left behind. My question is, have you ever read any of Maya Angelou's work?
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fuller?
No, I haven't. I've listened to some of her speeches, but I've never read any of her books. But there's a lot of books that I would read. I have them on hand. I have some of Maya Angelou's books that are available to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I just have so many books and so little time. And there's a lot of people who have written books that I want to read. The works of Gwendolyn Brooks, etc. And even though I'm not a person who particularly cares for what you call traditional poetry, but she's somebody I'd like to pay attention to, because I've heard a lot of excellent reports on things that she has written. And there's so many things written by so many people that I wish I had the time. I just wish I had the time. I'll never get to them. I have a long list. People have asked me what books have I read. I've read a whole bunch of them, but it's not near as many as I've read as I would like to read. Books that I'll never read. And I heavily regret that, because I think I'd be much further along in my thinking if I'd read them. So for those who do read these books and they get some type of guidance that has a constructive effect on your thinking, by all means, grab hold to them. And sometimes people call in, even on this show, and read right directly from the Bible. And nothing incorrect about the Bible. The Bible would not have lasted so long if it was all a bunch of nonsense, things not even to consider thinking about. It wouldn't have lasted. You're talking about a long-lasting book, and a book that's readily available just about everywhere. It wouldn't have that type of popularity. I might have done something for somebody. Books don't last. See, books can carry their own weight over a period of time, and the ones that are really worth reading or stand out in some way, they just automatically last, because they help people to solve their problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Quran, the Bible, the Book of Mormon, which is a brand of Christianity, that's a special book, I understand, that Mormons read. I mean, these books have lasted, so there's something in these books that attracts people to doing what? To solving their problem. People kind of latch on to things that help them solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
Or the things die on the vine themselves. You don't have to get rid of them. You don't have to burn them. I mean, they just die because they're not having nobody do nothing.
Okay. All righty, Deontay. Thank you for your questions. Okay, let's go to the care unit man himself, Brother Muko from Baltimore, Brother Muko, good morning. You are on with Mr. Fuller.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. Sorry for all the background noise. I'm driving. But I wanted to, I'll make it real quick. Mr. Fuller, for my care unit on Twitter and all around the world, basically, can you explain to my care unit the importance of the three things that we should never ask for in a system of white supremacy, or ever? And I have a second question that's really brief after you answer that.
Never ask for an apology, never ask for respect, and never ask for love. Why? Because respect for one thing, is something you give to yourself. You can't get it from anybody else. So you never ask for something that you can't get from nobody else, no way. And what is respect? Refusing to lie to yourself. That's the definition.
Mm-hmm.
Don't lie to yourself. When you start lying to yourself, you're through booking all the way in everything. You start saying things to yourself that you know are not true, but you want to believe it's true. Now, that's the lack of respect. There's only one type of respect, and that is self-respect. You get it from yourself. You cannot get it from somebody else. Now, love, if a person loves you, they'll show it. If you got to ask for it, you're putting yourself at risk. You never ask anybody for love. I need your love. If they want to give it to you, you'll get it. They'll chase you down and tie you up with it. That's when it's real.
Yeah.
Tell me that you love me. And you're doing it at gunpoint. That ain't worth 2 cents. And the same thing with what? An apology. Love, respect, and an apology. Now, I apologize to you, all right? But I'm going to do it again. So what? How many apologies do you want? I'll sign them over to you. Is 2,000 enough to hold you till Thursday? No, if a person's going to apologize, they do that on their own. If you ask them for an apology, that ain't worth nothing. And I'll give that illustration I usually give. I got to do this one on the love thing.
Go ahead,
that
please
song,
say it.
I told you that I loved you. Now get out.
I was hoping you would do that one. That is so funny to me.
That says it all right there. I told you that I loved you. Now get out.
Get out.
You got your love.
You back.
Now hit the road.
I don't know. When you first told me that, it just struck a funny bone in me. I don't know why. I apologize. That's just funny to me. Brother Muko, what is your second question?
It's definitely funny to me as well, but it definitely has to be repeated over and over again. My second question, Mr. Fuller, for my care unit all around the world, a lot of my fellow victims, I see them throwing their degrees of education around, like that means something in the system of racism, white supremacy. So can you express to my care unit who controls all education in the system of racism, white supremacy, no matter what degree you may think you have?
The white supremacy.
You can keep me on the line after that, Mr. Bobby.
Okay. In answer to the question, the white supremacists. Everybody all over the world says what? I'm trying to get my children to get an education. Now, what does that mean? For a black person to say that in the system of white supremacy, it means which way did the white folks go? And literally, we see that in the newspapers and on the television. They say, I'm trying to get a better life. Black people trying to cross borders. People of color, black, brown, red, yellow, trying to get across this border. I might drown doing it, but I got to get across here. I just got to. I got to take my baby with me. Because I want my baby to grow up where it can get what? And a better life. A better life consisting of what? Well, first of all, we want something in our heads. We want an education, how to get something done that makes sense. Well, for a whole lot of dark people, that means somebody got to answer the question, which way did the white people go? That's what they want to know. You black people, get out of my way, man. I can't get nothing from y'all. I ain't got nothing. Y'all just like me. I mean, just walking around cussing and fussing and fighting, and I got to get away. I got to get out of here. What do you mean, get out of here and go where? Which way did the white folks go, dummy? You want to learn something, you better be around some white people with your black self. Well, you ain't going to learn nothing. And then when you get it, you're going to do what? Prance across a stage with their signature on a piece of paper. Because now you are, quote, unquote, educated with your dumb black self. Why? Because a white person told me I was educated.